one of the models. This is the GFS model, the American model. Remember, the European model kind of put it right about here for low pressure. Notice the GFS is generally to the left. Ignore these out here. They would be discounted, but this general crowd of them here indicates that the GFS looks that way, where the European model is more over here. So we're going to draw from, let's say, Panama City to Sarasota as the most likely area where the center comes. And remember, the effects occur outside the center. So in terms of what we're expecting on the west coast of Florida, we're expecting gusty winds, periods of heavy rain, and storm surge. What we don't know is the level of those impacts. That's what is uncertain at this time. So how gusty, how heavy, and how much storm surge. Is it going to be a foot or two of storm surge, which is just a super high tide, or is it going to be 3 feet or more of storm surge, which would flood low-lying areas? We can't say at this point because we don't know how strong the storm is going to be and exactly where the strong onshore winds are going to be. Then the storm is going to move off, and the Carolinas and Georgia are going to have to watch what the next developments are. All right, guys, back to you.
Yeah, Brian, so much to keep our eyes on over the course of the next couple of days and even into early next week. I know that you're going to be following this every step of the way. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Brian Norcross. Brian, thank you as always. And of course, elsewhere in the Atlantic Basin, we'll keep a very watchful eye on, again, this. It is our hurricane. How about it, right? Just upgraded not too long ago. Hurricane Franklin, we're going to show you that in just a moment. Note that those buoys, 41046, showing 38-mile-per-hour wind gusts is what we're seeing as we speak. Again, note that as of the newest advisory that just came out about 11 minutes ago or so from the National Hurricane Center, winds up to 75 miles per hour. Not surprisingly whatsoever, Brian Norcross was just talking about how the fleet of hurricane hunters just flew into this specific system. It's expected to fly into our invest tomorrow. But today, though, the reconnaissance showed about an hour and a half to 2 hours ago that we saw some 75-mile-per-hour winds. So, again, no surprises that this was upgraded to a Category 1 storm. However, here's the thing. Given its trajectory, it's going to get awfully close to Bermuda. And given where Bermuda is, it's going to be basically in the front right quadrant of this system. We'll have to watch because depending on how close it's going to get, we could see those tropical showers, tropical thunderstorms, not to mention some of that storm surge possible as well, especially right along some of the shorelines. Let's watch this very carefully. Notice that by the time we get to about Tuesday morning or so, we're talking about wind gusts over, say, 140 miles per hour, sustained winds around 115 or so, and that's going to continue to work up toward the northeast. And as it does so, it'll sideswipe, say, the United States in terms of its broader impact, so a couple of showers and thunderstorms maybe along the east coast, and certainly some big waves is what we're anticipating. So let's talk about those wave heights. Note that from places like the southeast quadrant there of Georgia, friends and family down towards, say, Savannah, Tybee Island, and then you start to work up the coast of South Carolina and parts of North Carolina. We could be talking about some larger waves for you. So that rip current risk really is going to be a present danger with Franklin through not only the middle half of the week, but also the second half of the week as well. And don't forget that tonight, right here on Fox Weather, you'll want to make sure that you tune in first at 8 o'clock for As It Happened. We're going to reinvestigate Hurricane Harvey. Then we'll talk about at 9 p.m. Hurricane Irene. And then at 10 p.m., Fox Weather reports the wrath of Hurricane Andrew. That's all happening tonight right here on Fox Weather. You'll want to make sure that you stay with us. More Fox Weather coming up right after this. Back now on Fox Weather, your Hurricane HQ. We are looking live as we speak in parts of Tampa, Florida. The reason for it is because we have some tropical activity that could be moving into Tampa as we work our way into this upcoming work week. Currently, we're partly cloudy at 87 degrees. You factor in the humidity out there. Feels like 94 degrees at Tampa International Airport as we speak. Of course, all eyes are on the tropics, and specifically what you'll notice is this cluster of showers and thunderstorms. That, by the way, going to be western Cuba. So friends and family that live toward Las Tablas and or El Hollandas, that's right here in Cuba. Right here and here, it is some big-time showers and big-time thunderstorms that we're tracking. Actual center of circulation is just removed and just southwest of where we're seeing the actual cluster of showers and thunderstorms as we speak. But let's talk a little bit more about Invest 93L. It's currently sitting off the coast of not only Cancun, but also a very popular cruise destination, that being Cozumel, Mexico. Not a ton of movement expected in the next, say, 24 hours. It's moving generally toward the north at about 10 miles per hour, but it is moving into a zone that's more favored for tropical development. Usually the more wind shear we have, we call that a more hostile environment. A lot of wind shear up top in the atmosphere literally acts to decapitate some tropical systems. That's not the case. So we have low wind shear as that system begins to kind of channel its way through both Cuba and the Yucatan and then into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. There's a lot of moisture upstairs for our Invest 93L to tap into, and those water temperatures, it's like bath water, 2 degrees shy of 90, and just off the coast of Tampa, although one buoy registering 85 degrees, I've seen low 90s in the past couple of days. So again, there's a lot of fuel, if you will, for the fire when it comes to tropical development. We're not seeing a whole lot of land interaction here. So again, this is going to really lead to a lot of further enhancement and development of this system as it continues to work up toward the northeast. So a lot that we're going to continue to monitor with our Invest 93L, which again could actually have a name designated within the next, say, 72 hours or so. We're going to watch that very carefully as we head into this upcoming work week. Meanwhile, in parts of the Midwest, friends and family in Nashville, Tennessee, you can of course see there in the distance, that, my friends, is where the Tennessee Titans play, right? Over 32 million Americans, included our friends toward the Grand Ole Opry there in Nashville, could see strong to severe storms. That would be mainly from Cape Girardeau. That, of course, where they have Cape Safari Park, and of course they have the Cape Splash Family Aquatic Center. Don't get me wrong, I understand it's really warm out there today, and you might want to go to that aquatic park, but just bear in mind and keep an eye to the sky, right? Because a couple of heavy storms are possible, especially in this shaded area that looks like a ketchup color. You'll notice the mustard color that surrounds it. That does include Memphis, Charlotte, parts of St. Louis, and even Lexington, Kentucky, right around, say, Man o' War Boulevard and Rupp Arena. We have that chance for seeing some strong to severe storms. So when would that fire up? This is a great time to maybe put down your spoon if you're having lunch and check out your screen. St. Louis, we've already been under the gun with some heavy showers and strong to severe storms this morning. Looks like we could see another round move in late this evening as that energy then crisscrosses into the bluegrass state of Kentucky. Louisville down toward Nashville, knocking on the western edge of the city in Nashville by the time we get to daybreak tomorrow on Sunday morning. So heading out the door to worship services. Maybe you're thinking about taking mom, grandma, grandpa, and dad maybe out to breakfast and brunch. We're going to be watching that very carefully through the morning. And then notice that by the time we get to Sunday evening, friends from Charlotte, Richmond, Virginia, and eventually toward the Outer Banks, yeah, getting slammed by Sunday. And it's the reason why the Storm Prediction Center based in Norman, Oklahoma, has highlighted this region for an area to watch as well for that development of some heavy showers and strong to severe thunderstorms. All of this, by the way, really being fueled by all that heat that we've been contending with throughout the center of the country. Dallas, by the way, has now reached 100 degrees 45 times this year. That's the 8th most 100-degree days on record for the Big D. Now, concerns are being raised as kids, of course, go back to school in this scorching stretch of weather. Fox Weather's Katie Byrne is in Dallas with more on how Dallas is dealing with this big-time heat.
We are baking here in Dallas, and schools all across the central part of the country are making changes to keep kids safe in this heat. Some are pushing the first day altogether because of it. Others are sending kids who've already started home early.
It's not safe for the kids to be playing sports out in 110 with all the full pads and everything. I don't know when it's going to get cooler. I'm hoping by September, but could be, you know, sometimes in Texas it doesn't get cooler until October.
Dallas is dealing with temps over 100 degrees for more than a week straight. Dallas County officials say there have been 5 heat-related deaths this year, and the county is investigating 36 other deaths suspected to be related to heat. The dangerous weather is shaping up to be the hottest stretch of heat they've had this summer.
I'm dripping, I feel like I just got out of a hot shower.
I'm sweating like crazy, and I just feel, it makes me feel so tired, like the sun hitting me in the face.
Oh, it's so hot, so hot. Yeah, you just come out here for a minute and you're already sweating.
We caught up with kids and parents in the pickup line at a school in the city. Dallas area schools are moving sports practices inside or later at night when the heat finally breaks 100 degrees after dark. And in school, the heat is a hot topic.
They're just saying like how they can't wait for winter, they hope it snows, so we can just escape the heat. We didn't go outside for recess because it's too hot. And I looked at the board, and it says 101.
It's so hot, it's impacting infrastructure. This is water gushing from water main breaks, not rain, though many people wish it was for some relief. In Fort Worth, the ground is so dry that pipes are shifting, and city officials are seeing a spike in water main breaks like this. There is some relief in sight, but not until early next week, when we will finally not hit 100 degrees for the first time in almost 2 weeks. In Dallas, Katie Byrne, Fox Weather.
Oh, Katie, I'm just exhausted just thinking about all that heat. My goodness. Hey, you are looking live right now in Independence, Missouri, where at Lee's Summit Municipal Airport, a couple of clouds being reported. As you can see, there's 77 degrees, the current temperature. But here's the thing, as Katie just mentioned, that heat really isn't going anywhere anytime too soon, unfortunately, for so many. In fact, over 93 million Americans under some sort of heat alert today. Not only does it include the metroplexes of Dallas, Fort Worth, but Jackson, Mississippi, Little Rock, Arkansas, Atlanta, Georgia, a.k.a. Hotlanta, Georgia, right, living up to its name, that's for sure. And that's going to be continuing at least through the day today, perhaps tomorrow and into this upcoming work week. Look at Dallas showing off at 108 degrees. Those are actual air temperatures, so it is going to be a warm go of things today. Thank goodness there is a little bit of a break that is on the way. But please keep in mind that I know a lot of folks on the weekends, especially Saturday and Sunday, love to go out grocery shopping, maybe need to restock on the bread, milk, and eggs, the whole 9 yards. But please keep in mind that inside your vehicle, if you want to take your furry friend for a quick little cruise in the car, do not leave them in the vehicle, because after only about an hour's worth of time, that 108 degrees in Dallas is going to feel more like 150 degrees. So again, that could be lethal after just a couple of minutes for animals left in cars. So please make sure that you watch out for it. Dallas will cool things down to 100 degrees by Sunday. And then by the time we get to Monday, a more manageable 90-degree reading, and we'll hang out in the 90s as we head into this week. So again, the scorching heat won't be as hot, but still certainly going to be warm in the Lone Star State. Keeping in the Lone Star State, scorching temperatures in Texas are taking a toll on residents, especially those that are going to be outside. Now, the oppressive heat is also leaving fewer people interested in eating outside. Fox 26 Houston reporter Tom Zika shows us a closer look.
During the lunch hour at the Field and Tides restaurant in the Heights, about half the dining room is full, while the expansive patio outside sits empty. In the hot summer sun, there is little surprise that diners have no interest in the outside.
0%. this heat right now, nobody wants to sit outside. It's tough.
Field and Tide's executive chef Travis Lenig says that understandable refusal takes a toll. With more than half his seating outside, it sits empty much of the time. The Wall Street Journal reports that industry data shows a significant decline in restaurant business in general because of the heat. Lenig says it's become very noticeable.
We really started to see people that were not willing to sit outside at all. Like, I could count on two hands right now how many tables we've had in the past 6 weeks.
And he's not alone. At Pizarro's Pizza in Memorial, business has been dragging for a couple of months as temperatures remain high. Owner Nicole Bean says traffic is down about 20% in a year she says has been among the most challenging. But as people stay weary from the heat, she gets it.
You know, on a hot summer's day, you don't want a hot pizza. You want ice cream or, you know, a smoothie or something just like that'll cool you from the inside out.
While they are as sick of the hot weather as so many of us, neither of these restaurant owners is terribly worried just yet. Both of them firmly believe that whenever the weather breaks, those diners will come back. Watching Your Money, I'm Tom Ziska, Fox 26 News.
All right, Tom Ziska, thank you so much.
2, 1, engine full power, and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon, go Crew 7.
How amazing was this? Hope that you had a chance to catch it. Clear skies led to a successful launch for NASA and SpaceX Crew 7 to the International Space Station there in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Now, aboard the station, members are going to conduct hundreds of experiments and technology demonstrations to prepare for missions to, get this, the moon, Mars, and beyond. How about it? That is going to be incredible. Man, more Fox weather coming your way right after this.
I'm Brian Norcross with a Hurricane HQ Minute on how we know how high storm surge could get at any location along the coast. Every location along the East Coast and the Gulf Coast is subject to storm surge when a hurricane makes landfall. But how high could the water get in a place like Miami Beach here? Well, the science to tell us that is very accurate. The powerful winds in a hurricane push the ocean water ahead of the storm. When the hurricane hits the coast, that moving mass of elevated water is pushed over the shoreline. That's what we call storm surge. It's measured by how deep the water gets above the highest normal high tides. The height of the storm surge can vary tremendously with the size of the storm, the angle of approach, and more. But if the various factors come together in something like a worst possible way, how high could the water get at any one location? The National Hurricane Center has a tool that will give us the answer. For essentially a worst-case scenario, we choose Category 5 at the top. Then if we zoom into the Miami area, you can read off the highest likely storm surge here. Here along the beachfront in Miami Beach, you see the orange strip. That means a maximum water rise of up to 9 feet above normal high tide. But in and around downtown Miami, we see a lot of red areas. That means a surge of over 9 feet is possible. Since we never know exactly how and where a hurricane is going to come ashore, evacuations and warnings are always for a larger area than ends up getting hit. But the people that get hit are always well warned. Hurricane HQ has you covered. Stay informed this hurricane season. Download the Fox Weather app right now.
And we're back right now on Fox Weather. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Saturday. It's your 26th day of August. I'm Michael Esterman. I know that you are excited and looking forward to your Labor Day weekend next weekend. However, we could be tracking some trouble in the tropics. Let's get you out toward a very popular vacation destination. Cancun, Mexico, currently reporting 80 degrees Fahrenheit with some showers in the area. And if you look really closely at the camera lens here at this, it looks like a beautiful resort. You can, of course, see a few of those raindrops. And here's the thing. There is, I see 1, 2 people, 3 people in the pool there on the left. They are, listen, it is one of those deals where they're like, I'm still getting my money's worth even though it is raining. Listen, I get it. I understand. If there's any bit of good news is that although, yes, we are continuing to track Invest 93L, at this point, it is not a named storm. That could, though, change over the course of the next 72 hours or so. We're expecting about 1 to 2 inches of rain possible out of this disturbance. That, of course, going to be something that we're watching very carefully as it works its way in between not only the Caribbean Sea, but also the Gulf of Mexico. It's not moving very quickly, 10 miles per hour or so. Buoy cameras look like this. You can see those clouds associated with our system. This buoy about 120 miles or so, nautical miles or so east of Cozumel, Mexico, and the barometric pressure over the past couple of hours is actually beginning to rise some. Here's what things look like as Invest 93L continues its trek up toward the north and moving into the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Again, we're going to anticipate perhaps some more strengthening. Let's get more details on that as we speak. Because again, as you look at things, this is going to be in St. Pete Beach where current temperatures are at 86 degrees. The big focus, especially along the west coast and Gulf side of Florida, is really going to be on Invest 93L, which is again spinning just off the coast of Cancun and Cozumel. Yesterday, as you know, those showers and thunderstorms really began to erupt, and that's exactly what we're seeing, especially in the western edge there of Cuba. The National Hurricane Center says that a tropical depression is likely to form. For more, we want to turn things over to Fox Weather hurricane specialist Brian Norcross. And Brian, you know, you've been looking at this system for several days now as it's beginning to show just a little bit of organization, or we're at least expecting some organization in the next, say, 72 hours or so. What do you think the biggest concerns are going to be for the west coast of Florida?
Well, the first concern is you can just bet that most everybody on the West Coast is looking at the computer models, looking at Twitter and Facebook and everything else, and trying to figure out where it's going to go. We have a general idea. It's going to the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. The zone is between Sarasota and Panama City, it looks like. But the fundamental rule is before a system is developed, the forecasts are subject to change because we don't even know where the center is going to end up. When we look at it right now, you see the estimate from the National Hurricane Center is 25-mile-an-hour winds, and probably in this cluster out here to the east of where we think the center is, as you were saying, somewhere near Cozumel, maybe around in there. But what happens is when the thunderstorms are displaced, sometimes what happens is a new center jumps over here and it forms over here. Well, if the computer models are starting out thinking that it's over there, they start out with the wrong information, the basically fundamentally wrong information. So that's why I always say that until it develops, until it's well organized, then we just put a big kind of blur on the forecast in terms of how it shows it coming out. When we look at the upper levels of the atmosphere, which we can see here when we look at the water vapor, so the water vapor analysis is kind of in the mid to upper levels. Look at the way these clouds are moving. They're moving in that direction there, and over here you see them moving this direction. So you have this general broad area here of high pressure over top of the system, but sitting right over top of it. So first of all, that's generally conducive for strengthening, but it also doesn't have any steering. The steering is all out in here. You see the flow is out in here. Right over top of the system, there is nothing pushing it. So that's why we have a system that's parked there right off of Cancun. Hurricane Center says it is going to move to the north, and it is going to very likely develop into at least tropical depression, and there's no question that it's very likely to develop into at least a tropical storm. And it could develop into a hurricane. This looks like a cone. You can kind of think of it as a cone, but it really means the area where this circulation would develop. And it's more likely to happen down in here, although, things can happen and it doesn't get together as soon as we think. And like I said, when systems are in this undeveloped stage, then forecasts can change. All right, so here's the way the computer models work. As you all know, if you look at the computer forecast models, they show you where the storm is forecast to go, the European model, the GFS model, the other models, right? But then there's another kind of computer models, and what they do is, like I said, we don't really know for sure where this system is actually going to start out. Is it really going to start out there, or is it going to redevelop over to the east somewhere, closer to Cuba maybe, under those thunderstorms? What exactly is going to happen? We don't know. So what they do is they say, let's assume it's over here. Let's assume it's over there. Let's put a bunch of them and then run them all and see what happens. All right, Brian and Weather Command, I need your help to kind of move this forward. And there we see that it ends up kind of all over the place, which is very often the case in an undeveloped system. But they're not all equal. Generally, we don't look at these outliers. We look at where the preponderance of them are. And you see they're up in there. And here's where the European puts it right there. Now, if we look at what the European version of this, it puts kind of it more like this. So let's just say Panama City to Sarasota is the zone where the center of the low pressure, whether it's a tropical storm, whether it's a hurricane, whatever it is most likely to go. And remember, the worst weather is to the right of that center, so south of that center down the coast. So just imagine those possibilities. That's all we can imagine at this point are the possibilities. So as far as the west coast of Florida, what are the issues here? Well, we're expecting gusty winds. Somewhere on the west coast, the winds are going to get quite gusty, could be hurricane force, and probably will be gusting to hurricane force, actually. Periods of heavy rain, although on the west coast of Florida, they're desperate for heavy rain. So that'll be fine as long as it all doesn't come at once and turn into some kind of a flood. And storm surge is definitely a possibility. It only takes a good tropical storm to make storm surge that can flood low-lying areas. If you were on the West Coast and you remember Ada a few years ago, it was a tropical storm, Ada, at that point. That caused significant flooding. So, we need to be ready for that, the West Coast being very vulnerable to flooding. And then, of course, we'll have to watch for the Carolinas and Georgia. That would be in midweek, so they're late week. So this happens Wednesday, and then Thursday over there on the southeast coast. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, Brian, keeping a very close, watchful eye on things. As you said, we need the rain. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers here. It's incredible. Sarasota over 18 inches in deficit. Tampa over 14 inches in deficit. We need the rain, just not all in one go of things. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Brian Norcross. Brian, thank you so much for your perspective. We'll check back in with you in the next half an hour. Elsewhere in the Atlantic Basin, keeping a very watchful eye on Franklin and a couple of other disturbances. Look at the buoys already measuring about 36 to near 40-mile-per-hour winds with this. Now, when you actually look at the center of circulation, our hurricane counters have actually clocked winds up and over 74 miles per hour. Why is that important? Is because that's the threshold. Winds over 74 to 75 miles per hour means it is a low-end Category 1 hurricane. This happened about 41 minutes ago or so. And note, too, where it's located, just east of the Turks and Caicos Island. All of that energy is going to move up toward the north, and it's going to get awfully close to Bermuda. Bermuda has a population of about 64,000 people. Bermuda located about 650 miles east of North Carolina, just out into the water. So just for some perspective for you. And again, friends and family that might be vacationing there are going to need to watch this very carefully, because Franklin's expected to strengthen into a major hurricane. That's a Category 3 or larger by the time we get to Tuesday. So let's watch it very carefully. Along the immediate east coast of the United States, the concern is really going to be for higher not only swells, but perhaps even so those rip currents and those undertows that pull folks into the water, unfortunately leading to over 70 deaths per year. And note where we could see that. Right along the Jersey Shore, parts of New York won't be spared from the far-reaching effects of Franklin. So again, we're going to watch this very carefully as we head into this upcoming work week. And as you know, we are heading into the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season, but some people are still setting their sights on a cruise vacation out of places like Fort Lauderdale. Unfortunately, many of the most popular ports are in hurricane-prone areas. So you're looking at Fort Lauderdale, you think about the port of Miami. Fox Weather spoke with the cruise guide, Stuart Chiron, earlier to find out what you can do to get the most out of your late week summer cruises.
And joining us now from Miami is the cruise guy, Stuart Chiron. Stuart, thanks so much for coming on board with us this morning. First off, tell us how the cruise industry is as a whole right now, especially as things are back to normal.
Well, I just came back from 4 Mediterranean cruises in the past couple of weeks, and the ships are full. Europe is full. People are traveling from the U.S. to Europe with a vengeance. Cruises to Mexico, Alaska, the Caribbean. Especially the Caribbean, have been incredibly popular this summer as the ships are back to 100% occupancy.
You know, I've been on a cruise myself. This was pre-pandemic, so it was a thriving business. But, you know, as we've seen things get back on par, you know, what do you think of hurricane season coming to a peak now? You know, is this the time that people should be planning a cruise, say into August and September?
Well, believe it or not, it's a very popular time for people to go. The kids are in school, so you're not going to see as many families. But the ships, there's still a lot of ships in Europe and Alaska. They're repositioning back in October, November. But the Caribbean still has a lot of cruises. And the good thing is, you were showing video in a prior story about Cancun, cruise ships can move. And the weather tracking capabilities, weather is a very important part of a cruise. And their ability to track and alter the itineraries of the ships is just incredible.
And when it comes to traveling, maybe during this peak time of the year for hurricane season, do you think it's important for folks to know how to adjust their travel plans? If so, how would you go about suggesting that to, you know, a traveler?
Well, the first thing I would recommend people to make sure they have is they've got travel insurance. You know, just in case. The only part of the cruise that's really going to be interrupted is the beginning or the end. You know, when you get on the ship and when you get off the ship. The ships will alter. There may be deviations to the date you get off if the ship is impacting your arrival port. But other than that, it's just having a lot of common sense.
Well, we are definitely going to be watching closely as hurricane season continues to unfold. We thank you so much for joining us here on Fox for the first weekend. The cruise guy, Stuart Chiron. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.
All right, great insight there. Now to Fox Weather history. Hurricane Harvey made landfall near Rockport, Texas. That's just north of Corpus Christi on August the 25th. This was back in 2017, making it the first major hurricane to hit the United States in 12 years. You'll remember that Hurricane Harvey originally was named just east of the Lesser Antilles, but then it regenerated just a couple of days later in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, if there was any silver lining, it was that Harvey snapped the U.S. major hurricane drought on August the 25th. Now, over the next several days, Harvey drifted north. It stalled near Houston, and it dumped a deluge, a record amount of rain. How much? 60 inches. That's over 5 feet near Nederland, Texas. Harvey, interestingly enough, had a peak storm surge.
I chose Wix for my business because of its massive scope for functionality and freedom of creation.
Fox Weather right after this.
Being able to integrate and change and develop at my own pace. I offer a range of products and services. To manage it all from one place is essential. It gave me time back in my day to get going on actual projects. It really just made everything feel more achievable.
Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks so much for joining us. Taking a live look out at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This camera courtesy of EarthCams as we continue our coverage here of that 60th anniversary event commemorating the March on Washington.
We talk about Black and Jewish unity. We call upon images of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel marching together 60 years ago on days like these. And while it is certainly true that there are times when there is disunity between the two identities of mine in both our shared and neighboring communities, there is an energy in the air right now that seems to be radiating off of everything. And me getting to stand here as a Black rabbi, it does not get more harmonious than this. On the Jewish calendar, we are in the time of year when we are in deep reflection about the decisions we've made and the interactions we've had that have both lived up to and have fallen short of our values. In the places where we feel that we can do better, we seek to repair the harm we've done and return to the ideals that both guide and ground us. And for me, that's what this is all about, because at the beginning, middle, and end of my days, I'm just a mom who is trying to make the world a better place for my kids to grow up in. My boys walk through this world proudly descended from both freed slaves and Holocaust survivors. The history of all of those ancestors courses through their veins. It is my job to make sure they walk upright in a world that doesn't seem to want to just let them be. But I can't do it by myself. You are my village, and I need your help. And I think that that's why we're all here. We see brokenness around us, and we're dedicating ourselves to make it better. At the dinner table, at the nail salon, at the barber shop, in the doctor's office, in the voting booth, in bathrooms, at school, all of the places where hurt happens, we are asking, how can we make it better? Because we need to believe that through our collective action, we will one day live in a world without fear. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Good morning. My name is Lacey Schwartz Delgado, and I would like to thank the King family and Reverend Sharpton and all of the organizers for having me here today. To paraphrase Dr. King, who said right here 60 years ago, we cannot be satisfied as long as the black man in Mississippi cannot vote and the black woman in New York thinks she has nothing to vote for. Well, I am a lifelong New Yorker, and I'm saddened to say that today, New York, along with Mississippi, is still in the bottom 10 of all 50 states for voter turnout. We have to change this because freedom comes from participating in power. And I can tell you, in New York and everywhere else in America, we damn sure have something to vote for. So as a black Jewish woman in a rural town who's an artist, mother, and second lady of New York State, I'm here to join all of you in speaking truth to power and recommitting to action. This means empowering all communities to engage in our system. It means voting, and it also means service to each other. Truth-telling is difficult work. I have personally experienced how hard it is to feel like the only one speaking the truth. When our most important relationships are on the line, when our emotional and physical security are at stake. But I've also experienced how it can be when we dedicate time and energy to overcome fear. We must always believe in transformative power of truth-telling. We cannot allow the dark forces of extremism, intolerance, and hate to corrupt us and make us cynical.
Listening in there to those special events as we commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights March, the March on Washington. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes with more coverage, live, raw, and unfiltered.
Earthquake, magnitude 2.2, 1 hour 29 minutes 22 seconds ago, southern Greece.
Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks so much for joining us here at 11:54 on the East Coast, 8:54 over on the West Coast. Taking a live look there out at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This camera courtesy of Earth Cams, our partners there. We appreciate that. You're taking a live look at the Lincoln Memorial as well. That's where these speakers are currently on stage talking about this celebration as we mark the 60 years since the March on Washington. Let's listen in live, raw, and unfiltered.
We need you to run, because I'm here to tell you, while we have statues that admire great men like Abraham Lincoln behind me and so many others, the great men of history have their stories too often told time and time again that it was just them that was in charge of creating that change. When I have news for you, it has been, and it still is, and always will remain the people that lead that change, especially the black and brown women that lead the movement to end gun violence. As the man we said that we honor today, Dr. King once said, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Let us dedicate ourselves to that." Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Greg Jackson, the Executive Director for Community Justice Action Fund. And I stand here not by choice, but by circumstance. Because only 2 miles from here, I was shot. And the bullet that hit me hit 2 arteries, and I came within 26 minutes of death. When I laid on that pavement, all I could think about was, how do I stand up one more time? Right now in America, every 8 minutes, someone is shot and killed. A mother is mourning their children, and a tombstone stands where a life should live. One of those lives was my mentee, DeMarcos. DeMarcos, who hosted his own End the Gun Violence rally that buried 3 of his friends before he was shot and killed on his front porch. These are the lives that we're losing every single day. Every year, over 138,000 people are killed from this crisis. This is the #1 cause of death for all youth in America. The #1 cause of death for all black men in America. The #2 cause of death for all black women and all Latino men in America. But yet we have not seen the action to deal with the biggest health crisis of our time. In the past 30 years, we have only seen 1 law passed to address gun violence. 1 law. And yet our bodies are laying on the pavement every day. Every 8 minutes, another life is lost. And the people who are laying on the pavement have the answers. We know we need a public health response. We know we need resources for victims and survivors. We know that we need an Office of Violence Prevention. We know that we need gun safety measures. We know that we need to deal with this crisis head on, like we did COVID-19, like we're doing the opioid crisis, like we've done with every other health crisis in America. But yet, those black and brown bodies don't matter enough to see the action that we need. I look at you, every one of you within the sound of my voice, I look at you because this isn't an issue that's a civil rights issue or a social justice issue. This is life or death for you, like it was life or death for me. Don't be that person in the hospital. Don't be that one fighting for your life when you have the opportunity to take action. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Moss. I am a leader at Everytown for Gun Safety. On this very day, 9 years ago, my son Sean Moss' life was taken by someone that should not have had a gun. Am I mad that he's gone? I'm mad at the way that he went. I'm mad that extremists and gun lobbyists say that they can't, when in all actuality, they won't. I'm mad that people that look like me can't knock on doors or run in neighborhoods for fear of being shot. I'm mad because there are not resources for families like mine to deal with the tragedy and the aftermath, whether it's a national event, whether it's an event in someone's backyard, or whether it's a wounded person. So just let me be clear. Am I mad? Yes. Will I cry? Absolutely. But will I stop? No. Why? Because contrary to frustration, I am here. I am a must, I am an absolute, and I am very necessary. So I leave with you today what my son said to me when he would look at me and find me trying to figure it out. He said, Dukes, there's nothing you can't do. It's a new day, so let's get it.
Please welcome President of the AFL-CIO and Secretary-Treasurer of AFL-CIO, Liz Shuler and Fred Redmond.
Thank you so much. Hello, how are we out there? Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you to the King family. Thank you to every organizer out there today. Thank you to our ASL interpreters. Thank you. I'm Liz Shuler, President of the AFL-CIO, and I am honored to stand here today with Fred Redmond, our Secretary-Treasurer, representing 12.5 million working people, 60 unions, every industry in our economy, every sector across this economy. Any union members out there, let me hear you. I see you out there. We are here on the shoulders of giants. A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, Dr. King, John Lewis, Ella Baker, every person who marched. And here's what I want to ask you all today. Why is it when these giants came together 60 years ago, they chose this day right before Labor Day? Why is it that these civil rights and labor icons came together to plan this march when they did? Why is it? On the day that we tragically lost Dr. King in Memphis, he was standing with our brothers and sisters and siblings at AFSCME, ready to go on strike with sanitation workers. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because he knew this fight for racial justice and for economic justice are one and the same. Because he knew justice does not exist without a good job. Because Dr. King knew what A. Philip Randolph knew, what Bayard Rustin knew, what Mary McLeod Bethune and so many others knew. Life is better in a union. That's right. Right now, all over this country, millions of workers are finding this out too. Black, brown, AAPI, LGBTQ, immigrants, people of every race and background. And that's why this moment is not just a commemoration, it's a continuation. And the labor movement is fighting. We're fighting for a job you can build a future around. We're fighting to end a system that pays black women 64 cents for every dollar a white man makes. And we're standing up to the extremists who want to rip away our rights, including our right to vote. We're standing up for a better life for everyone. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I'm ready to keep marching. Are you? You ready to keep marching? Thank you.
Well, good evening, brothers and sisters. My name is Fred Redmond. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the National AFL-CIO. Look, throughout this country, workers are standing up and they're speaking out. They are joining unions in record numbers. And most of the time, it's against employers who threaten and even fire them for demanding that their voices are heard. I would like to present one of those brave workers who, along with her co-workers, are trying to unionize and have been trying to unionize since 2017. at a company in Hattiesburg, Mississippi called Maximus. I would like to introduce Ms. Tanya Jackson. Tanya.
Thank you. My name is Tanya Jackson. I'm a mother, grandmother, and a woman of faith from Prentiss, Mississippi. I am here on behalf of thousands of federal call center workers, mostly black and brown women and mothers just like me, who are overworked and underpaid. We are working with the Communication Workers of America to organize a union at Maximus, a huge federal government contractor. It's interesting to me that the company is called Maximus because what we experience is the minimum. Minimum pay, minimum benefits, minimum opportunities, and minimum respect. This is the same time that we're expected to take back-to-back calls, including calls where people use abusive, racist, and sexual language. It's not acceptable, and we're not going to take it anymore. At the original March on Washington 60 years ago, the marchers called for the federal government to make sure everyone had access to good jobs with fair wages and that people weren't discriminated against. How is it okay in 2023 that we work for a federal government and can't afford to pay our bills while the CEO of our company took home more than $6 million last year? I am here today to call on the Biden administration to investigate Maximus and to ensure that we hold federal contractors accountable to the highest standards of justice. Thank you.
Woo! Well
Good
done.
job.
Great job.
Please welcome Vice President of the National Education Association and one of the presidents of the National Nurses United. Let's welcome Ms. Princess Moss and Zanai Triunfo Cortez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Princess Moss, and I am proud to join you as Vice President of the National Education Association, the nation's largest labor union. 3 million public school employees serving 50 million public school students all across the nation. NEA members share one important goal: to make sure that every student, black, white, brown, indigenous, or AAPI, students from underserved neighborhoods, LGBTQ plus students, and our disabled students, every single student has every single thing they need, not just to survive, but to thrive. Reverend Sharpton, on behalf of NEA members all across the nation, thank you for your tireless activism and for never hesitating to use the National Action Network's power and wisdom to support our nation's students and educators. I must also recognize the Drum Major Institute for working every day, in every way, to remind each of us of our responsibility to preserve the dream of the man who spoke from these steps 6 decades ago. And that is the importance of this moment. As we remember, let us rededicate ourselves to continuing Dr. King's important work. As we reflect, let us remain committed to protecting educators' freedom to teach and our students' freedom to learn, because public education is the cornerstone of our democracy. And as we recall, let each of us continue to remind everyone that when it comes to creating a nation that we all deserve, especially our students, we will use every day to fight even harder. And when the time comes, we will vote even smarter. Thank you.
Yes, I'm what students deserve.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zanai Triunfo Cortez. I'm president of National Nurses United, the largest union of registered nurses here in the United States. I am very honored to be here today. Dr. Martin Luther King once spoke of a radical revolution of values that put people before profits. Nurses live this revolution every day as workers who care for people while our employers only care about profits. That is why we fight for Medicare for all. Nurses know healthcare doesn't stop at the hospital walls. It is impacted by housing, work, school, politics, and the climate. But anti-Blackness, racism, and oppression targeting gender, sexuality, ability, and class means that the most at-risk people are exposed to unhealthiest conditions. These injustices are harming and killing our patients. But nurses will never stop fighting for justice. There is strength in numbers. When we come in solidarity, we will radically revolutionize our culture to care for people.
Earthquake. Magnitude 2.2. 18 minutes, 41 seconds ago.
Thank you.
Central Turkey.
Let's welcome none other than the Ambassador, Andrew Young.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Young, and I've been here before. I was here 60 years ago, but I was also here 66 years ago in 1957. It's been a long but wonderful struggle, and I'm here to tell you that I don't feel no ways tired. We've come too far from where we started from. And nobody ever told us that the way would be easy. But frankly, as messed up as we can be, as difficult as life is, there is no place on earth that's any better than these United States of America. And if you don't understand that, remember, it was a blind man, Ray Charles, that said, "America the Beautiful." It was a man from the squalors of the slums of Louisiana and New Orleans, Louis Armstrong, that said, "It's a wonderful world." That if you look around and if you point your own beliefs in the direction that you want the nation and the world to go, and if you work toward those ends, you'll be surprised how many friends you have. You'll be surprised how many people from different countries want to work with us and want to be like us. I was privileged to go to the United Nations with Jimmy Carter as the president. But one of the reasons why Jimmy Carter got to be president was, as the governor of Georgia, he deputized every high school principal as a voter registrar.
Earthquake. Magnitude 4.
And you
2
couldn't
minutes, 1 second
graduate
ago.
from high
Costa
school
Rica.
in Georgia unless you were a registered voter. And he understood, as we understand, that the vote is the passport to freedom and opportunity. That is hard work, but it's good work. It's people that I met running my first voter registration drive in 1953 in Thomasville, Georgia, that shaped my soul, that helped me to believe that all things are possible. And it's no accident that a young man from Thomasville, Georgia, is now the Secretary of Defense of these United States of America. That if you look around and if you see what's going on, I remember when our president was just a young senator and I was a young congressman, 1973. And he was the victim of a tragic accident in his family. And he used to go home every day on the railroad to fix dinner for his children. And I knew back then that this was a young man of character and of commitment, and that he was going to go a long, long way. We went to Africa together. We got shut up in a cage almost, trying to see to it that we could get Nelson Mandela out of jail. Those things have happened, and Nelson Mandela took over in South Africa and got started the same kind of struggle for freedom we have here in these United States. But he did another thing that seems crazy. He invited his jailer to sit with his family, for he understood, as Archbishop Tutu said, there really is no future without forgiveness. Yes, I tend to get upset now and then, but my daddy told me when I was 4 years old, and when the Nazi party was on the corner of my house, 50 yards from where I was born, that those are white supremacists. But their problem is with God. You take care of your business and let God take care of them. And he said, don't ever let anybody make you mad. Don't get mad, get smart. When you lose your temper in a fight, and when you get upset, your mind kind of is cut off, and you have no possibility of using the strongest things that are available to you to bring about change. So don't get mad, get smart. Don't look at all the things that are wrong. Look back on where we were 66 years ago when we had the first March on Washington. And Martin Luther King said then, give us the ballot. And then he moved up and said, but I have a dream. But he gave his life for that dream. And unfortunately, the best thing you can do with your life is give your life for the dream that all men and women and children are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. God has blessed you. Say thank you, Nine.
All right, everyone, you are watching live now from Fox 1219 over on the East Coast and 919 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and we're here as we mark 60 years since the March on Washington. There's a program that has been underway for several hours now. After that program, that is when the march will begin. We will continue our live, raw, and unfiltered coverage right here on Live Now from Fox right after this quick 2-minute commercial break. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. It is 12:21 on the East Coast and 9:21 on the West Coast. I do want to get back to a live image right here showing Washington, D.C. as today we are commemorating the 60th anniversary of the historic March on Washington organized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders. It was all back in August of 1963 when more than 250,000 people gathered in the nation's capital for the March on Washington for jobs and for freedom. Folks there are now honoring and marking 60 years since that date. There is a program that is underway, so let's take you out there live, raw, and unfiltered.
Mission and hate, we create connection and community. In the face of fear, we have hope. In the face of despair, we have dreams. In the face of silence, we tell our stories. In the face of smears, we offer solutions. When they ban books, we give them away. When they try to erase history, we stand up and make sure it's taught, the good and the bad. When they denigrate LGBTQ students, we stand up for them. When they smear educators and public schools, we promote solutions to help every public school be a place that parents want to send their kids, educators want to teach, and kids thrive. So, as extremists try to divide us, public schools unite us. And because public schools unite us, they will anchor the promise of a multiracial democracy. So, 60 years later, we draw courage from those who stood on this hallowed ground. The courage to fight, the courage to care, the courage to speak out, the courage to show up and act. Today we march. Tomorrow we go back to our communities to exercise the muscle of activism, to bend the arc towards justice, to realize the promise of America for everyone. Thank you. And now the head of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, the institute that helped spawn this march, Cleola Brown.
Thank you, Randy. Ooh, thank you, Randy. Hello, freedom fighters. Hello, freedom fighters. Oh, yeah, that's the way to respond for sure. Our sister, Randy Weingarten, was generous enough to let me share this podium with her, and I'm going to do it in about 35 seconds. When I look out and see all of you, the beautiful faces and the crowd, I can remember 60 years ago because I was in the trees right over there. But it was Randolph and Rustin who got to the young people to talk with them about why it was necessary to do those same things that we must do all over again. If you heard anything that President Weingarten said, she said, what are we going to do after we finish marching? Marching is necessary, but a plan and a direction for where we go is absolutely the key to what must happen. I tell you this, standing on the shoulders of Randolph, standing on the shoulders of Rustin, and on the shoulders of all of the young activists that are anxious to follow you leaders that are out here, but also to find a pathway that belongs to them as well. God bless you on this 60th anniversary. Remember that it's not all about you. It is about the purpose and the cause. If we stay focused, we can make a change. God bless you all.
Woo! He's the president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees and board member of the National Action Network. Let's welcome Lee Saunders.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, I'm honored to stand on this hallowed ground, on this hallowed spot, representing 1.4 million members of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the everyday heroes, providing public services to all of you. I stand here in solidarity with my union family, echoing the calls to action you've just heard. from the AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, National Nurses United, and United Food and Commercial Workers. And you just heard from Clay. You know, when hundreds of thousands gathered here in 1963, they called it the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It was more than a protest against Jim Crow. It was a demonstration for labor rights. It was about fighting poverty, fighting prejudice, addressing segregation, addressing deprivation. It was about the unbreakable link between racial justice and economic justice. A few years later, sanitation workers represented by Local 1733 of AFSCME, 1,300 fearless black men, went on strike to assert their humanity, to demand dignity, and to demand respect. They changed the course of history by declaring
earthquake, magnitude 1.2, 14 hours, 8 minutes, 26 seconds ago, Germany.
Since then, there has been real progress, but we are not naive. Structural racism remains a brutal fact of American life. We bear its burden every single day, and the economy remains rigged against all working people. So we march again today because Dr. King's dream is unfulfilled. We march today because the real work begins tomorrow to organize and mobilize our communities across this country. We march again today. This is a moment to be agitators for change, a moment to act on the fierce urgency of now, a moment that we all must come together and make our voices heard loud and clear. A moment of courage, a moment of courage for all of us. Inspired by yesterday's struggles, but with resolve to build a better future, let us all meet this moment together. Thank you very much.
Co-founder and CEO of the Fearless Fund and COO of the Fearless Fund, let's welcome Arian Simone and Diana Parsons.
First, I'd like to start with honor. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, the King family, and its partners for having us here today. We are standing here today because we are inaugural defendants in one of the most defining lawsuits, of our time. Thank you. Edward Bloom and his organization have filed suit against our company because we invest in women of color founded businesses. We will. He and his deep-pocketed supporters are trying to stop millions and billions of dollars from getting into the hands of women and people of color. This lawsuit is not about us. This lawsuit is an attack to dismantle our economic freedom and our economic progress. 60 years ago, people gathered right here for jobs and freedom. And today, on National Women's Equality Day, we are standing here declaring we are in a state of an emergency. We need legislation that protects women and people of color. We need legislation that protects our economic freedom. We need legislation that ensures we have equal access to capital that is equitable. We stand here on the shoulders of Rosa Parks, RBG, Harriet Tubman, Coretta Scott King, Eleanor Roosevelt, and so many more. We will not back down. We will win this fight.
Economic freedom is where Dr. King left off, and economic freedom is where we will pick up. Yes, we will pick up, because freedom, as we know, is not free. There's a price that we all have to pay, and such a great sacrifice. Our ancestors died for us to have the possibility of freedom. We are economically fragile in this country, even more fragile, perhaps, than we were 60 years ago. Let me tell you how this lawsuit affects each and every one of us. Ed Blum and his deep-pocketed supporters are attacking you if you are black, if you are brown, if you are a woman, if you're Jewish, if you're LGBTQ+, if you are disabled, if you have ever been disenfranchised or marginalized in this country, he is coming after you. And let me tell you why. It is because of our identities, our rich identities, and how the world sees us. He is attacking our stories, our very rich stories. He's attacking our lived experiences. And who is he to tell us who we are and whose we are? I serve an awesome God. And when I tell you that Ed Blum will not prevail, he will not dismantle our HBCUs. He will not dismantle our small business grants and our funding. He will not dismantle our leadership development programs, our job access programs. When I tell you he will not dismantle our NIL contracts, he's coming for those too. He is coming for each and every one of us. We will prevail. Visit www.fearlessfreedomnow.org to join in our fight. We will prevail, we will overcome, and we will make the ultimate sacrifice to attack those who wish to tear us down. Thank you, and God bless.
And you are watching our coverage here 60 years later after the March on Washington. Of course, that is where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. There is a program that has now been underway prior to that march, which is expected to begin at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, and on the other side, we'll pop that audio back up and listen in live, raw, and unfiltered.
Earthquake, magnitude 3.3, 4 minutes 53 seconds ago, Croatia.
On Live Now from Fox, taking a live look in Washington, D.C. Just one of several views we have of the podium there as speakers are commemorating the 60th anniversary of the historic March on Washington, organized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders. It all happened back in August of 1963 when more than 250,000 people gathered in the nation's capital for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. We did have Nick Cannon on stage, it looks like, so let's pop up the audio and listen in.
God bless y'all. And as we walk in love, peace, and healing, take care.
Senior pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, let's welcome Pastor Jamal Harrison Bryant.
Good to see you. My name is Dr. Jamal Harrison Bryant. I come from the state of Georgia, the only state in America that has sent a Jew and a black man to Senate. I come to you today from the state of Georgia, where black women have set the standard that everybody is accountable, even if you are the former president of the United States of America. When we look at the past 60 years, we have to do measurement as to how far we have come. But this week in Fulton County, when it is that the former president said that he weighed 215 pounds, it became evident that America doesn't know how heavy the burden has been for us to handle oppression in this system. How heavy it is for teachers to have to buy their own school supplies. How heavy it is for writers who cannot write checks for their own rent. How heavy it is for you to get a scholarship to run a football, but cannot get an academic scholarship because of your mind. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come 60 years later because we need to serve indictments to those who have been adversarial to the advancement of our people. We need to give an indictment to Mr. DeSantis, who has operated in diabolical satanic form if he thinks that he can throw off that slavery was nothing more than trade school. He needs to be served an indictment if he is trying to ban books. What he doesn't know is too late because Negroes already know how to read. We have already read The Bluest Eyes. We've already read Their Eyes Are Watching God. We've already read Before the Mayflower. We have already read what it means to be black in America. There needs to be an indictment against Governor Abbott in Texas, who has unwillingly put migrant workers on buses and have separated children from their parents and still has not rejoined them. If he wants to put somebody on a bus, it should be Ted Cruz, who has been putting black and brown people under the bus. We came today to serve an indictment on Clarence Thomas, who has filled the seat of Thurgood Marshall, but is not worthy of tying Thurgood Marshall's shoes. And his wife is an unindicted co-conspirator on what took place on January 6th. I came to serve an indictment when it is that $25 billion is getting ready to go to the Ukraine, but nobody is saying anything about what's happening in Somalia and Niger and in the Congo. There needs to be an indictment on record companies that have tried to sweep away conscious hip-hop and do away with the voices of KRS-One and those who elevated us to understand that we were kings and queens and not glorify poverty and not promote addiction and marginalize misogyny. Something is wrong. There is an indictment on churches that are silent, but they speak in tongues, but don't speak truth to power. An indictment to churches that only give out communion, but do not feed those who are living in food deserts. An indictment of those who have multi-million-dollar buildings, but close a blind eye to those who do not have a our standard of living, there has got to be an indictment. And ladies and gentlemen, 60 years later, we understand that Dr. King was right, that this is the urgency of now. And if there is an indictment, then there's got to be fingerprints. And I want to say to the black and brown community, put your fingerprints all over deeds, put your fingerprints all over degrees, put your fingerprints on LLCs, put your fingerprints on corporate ladder, put your fingerprints on the necks of those who believe that white supremacy is palatable. We are not the generation who's going to sit down and be quiet. If you don't believe me, take a one-way trip to the dock of Montgomery, Alabama, and there you'll find out that no weapon formed against us will be able to prosper. Ladies and gentlemen, 60 years later, we still are not free, but we know how to last. We lasted through the Middle Passage. We lasted through Jim Crow. We lasted through mandatory minimums. We lasted through the prison pipeline. We lasted through Donald Trump. And still we are here. And 60 years later, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors who could not stop at hotels, who could not eat in restaurants. But we've come now not just from Morehouse and Hampton and Howard. We've come now from Johns Hopkins and Yale and Princeton, understanding the words of Langston Hughes. You may write me down in history, but I too sing America. They last meet and laugh when company comes, but I just smile and know that I am America. They didn't think that we were going to make it, but God did. We started at the bottom and we're still here. 60 years later, I don't want to be here marching. I want to be celebrating as our black daughters are the governors of Georgia and the vice president of the United States. Still, we rise.
All right, everyone, it is now 12:43 on the East Coast and 9:43 on the West Coast. Our coverage of the March on Washington 60 years later continues live, raw, and unfiltered after this 2-minute commercial break.
Earthquake, magnitude 0.6, 12 hours 45 seconds ago, France.
Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, taking a live, beautiful view there over in Washington, D.C. as we are commemorating the 60th anniversary of the historic March on Washington, organized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders. This all happening back in August of 1963, when more than 250,000 people gathered in the nation's capital for the March on Washington for jobs and freedom. Now, we are taking several speakers here as they are speaking prior to the march that is expected to get underway in just about 15 minutes. Let's pop the audio back up and listen in live, raw, and unfiltered.
Who participated, who strategized to put the march and put all of the things that we need to do forward in order to be fruitful in our quest for justice. My mother, Merle Evers, asked me to say some words to you because she could not be here today. She could not be here because she is in her 90th year of life. Thank you. I'm blessed that she is here. But as she has said to me, she said, pick up the torch. Be an advocate for justice and equality. And she said, it takes time, but not a lot of time. It takes movement, and that movement is about policy. That movement is about the vote. We tend to remember when there's a major election, but we need to get and mobilize everyone for this year and for next year. Stand empowered. Stand on your own voice and secure our rights. Thank you.
He is a CNN political contributor and the host of The Van Jones Show and The Redemption Project. Please welcome to the stage, Van Jones.
Hey. All right. 60 years ago, the people who were gathered here were actually mislabeled. They were called demonstrators. They were called protesters. They were called marchers. 60 years later, we can understand they were actually something much more profound. They were the final founders of a democratic republic on these shores. They were the final founders. There was no democratic republic founded in 1776. It was a slave state on stolen land. The Civil War didn't give us a democratic republic, it gave us apartheid. It was not until the people who came here 60 years ago took the stage of history that we finally founded a democratic republic. They were the founders of the republic that we live in. And more importantly, Dr. King was mislabeled. Dr. King was labeled as just a preacher. And he was a preacher. He was a good preacher. But 60 years later, he was actually the most consequential Afrofuturist of our time. Because when you talk about a dream, you're talking about the future. And he spoke into existence a future worthy of his people. So let's talk about the future. We talk a lot about Black history. What is the Black destiny? We talk a lot about Black history, but what is the Black future? I have an 18-month-old baby girl, 18 months. Her first crush is not likely to be a pop star. It's not likely to be a basketball player. It's likely to be an AI. Her first crush is likely to be an artificial intelligence bot that she can interact with on a persistent basis. 30 years from now, when she decides to have children, I hope, she will probably open her laptop and design them using biotechnology. And 90 years from now, she may be buried on Mars. We are on the verge and on the edge of a new human civilization because multi-trillion-dollar industries are being launched in quantum computing, artificial intelligence, biotech, and others with effectively zero black participation. I'm going to say it again. Multi-trillion-dollar industries in quantum computing, artificial intelligence, biotech, private space flights, and others, with effectively zero black and brown participation, which means this new order is being founded and it's likely to be a nightmare. And the only difference between having a Terminator future, a RoboCop future, a Matrix future, or Wakanda is our participation, our determination that you are not going to build a new human civilization that is neither human nor civilized. You're not going to build a new human civilization that is more racially exclusive than the one we're in right now. You are not going to build a future without us. And so let us declare that we are in the tradition of Dr. King as Afrofuturists, projecting a future worthy of our people and worthy of humanity. Let us declare that as they were the final founders of the last order, we insist that we will be the first founders of this one. Thank you very much.
All right, so we are commemorating the March on Washington 60 years later. Several speakers who are speaking ahead of the current march today, which is scheduled to begin at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That's in just about 8 minutes. We're